Why do we desire precisely what can hurt us? And what if the person who attracts you the most was in reality the cruelest reflection of your oldest wound? What if this love that paralyzes your body and sets your soul ablaze was merely a disguise for a trauma-seeking resolution? Until you become aware of it, the unconscious will direct your life, and you will call it fate. This phrase from Carl Jung is not advice. It is a warning, a lucid whisper rising from the depths of the psyche, seeking to rewrite itself. We've all been there, lying awake at dawn, our faces lit by the glow of a phone, waiting for a message that never comes, replaying every word exchanged, every touch, every absence, as if the answer were hidden in the details. But what we are trying to understand is not the other person. It's why that absence hurts so much, why that void feels so familiar, so intimate, almost comforting, and above all, why it feels like love. Carl Jung offers us no comfort. He hands us mirrors, and sometimes what we see reflected in them is disturbing. According to him, the desire that overtakes us is not merely a chemical reaction or a hormonal dance. It is a call from the unconscious. It is the anima or the animus, those inner figures shaped by the parts of ourselves we deny, projected onto another in a quest for wholeness. But this quest often becomes a trap. The darkest truth about sexual attraction is not that it is too strong. It is that it is too precise. It finds, with terrifying accuracy, the exact crack in your soul and slips through it. Often, we don't fall in love with the person standing before us, but with someone who, unknowingly, bears the perfect traits of the one we once lacked. We don't love the other. We love the possibility of rescuing a part of ourselves that was denied. It may feel like love, but it is merely a wounded child trying to mend a broken story with borrowed pieces. What you felt as chemistry might just have been your trauma whispering, "This time, it will work." But does it ever really work? Throughout this video, we will dive into this abyss with you, without guardrails, without a light at the end of the tunnel, because the only way out is to look directly at the darkness within you and understand, once and for all, that desire does not always point to love. Sometimes it points to your own captivity. So, close your eyes for a moment. Breathe. Think of the person who attracted you the most in your life. Now ask yourself, was that love, or simply the reflection of your past crying out for attention? Have you ever wondered why some gazes pierce us like a sharpened blade, while others barely graze us? Why do some people make us lose our reason in minutes, while others, even more suitable, hardly capture our attention? And more troubling still, why are we so often drawn to those who cannot love us, or worse, to those who can destroy us? There is a dangerous illusion in the modern world. The belief that desire is a reliable sign, that where there is fire, there is truth. But Jung would say, where there is fire, there is a shadow burning. Desire, especially the kind that paralyzes, consumes, and blinds, is rarely pure. It is almost always a symptom, a cry from the soul, seeking to complete itself, even if it means repeating exactly what wounded it. Imagine this. You walk into an ordinary place filled with dozens of people. Some greet you with kindness, others don't even notice you. But suddenly, someone looks at you, and something inside you shifts. Your body tenses, your heart races. You try to act natural, but you feel pulled by a force stronger than your will. That's not love. It's recognition. You recognize in that gaze something familiar, a known absence, a specific form of coldness, distance, or calculated seduction. You don't fall in love with the person who sees you. You fall in love with the one who activates a deep emotional memory of what you lacked. Jung called this projection. It's when our psyche, without us realizing, casts onto another everything we repress, our lacks, our hidden desires, our unresolved traumas. We think we're seeing someone, But in reality, we're seeing ourselves, or rather, what's missing within us. That's why the wrong person feels so right, because they reflect the exact piece of our emotional puzzle, even if, in the end, all they bring is pain. There's a story that illustrates this perfectly. A successful, admired, spiritually mature man. Yet every time he fell in love, it was with cold, distant, inaccessible women. Women who made him feel invisible. To his friends, it was simple. You deserve better. But for him, pulling away was impossible. He felt alive in that tension. In the rare moments of affection, he felt whole. When she withdrew, his world collapsed. That woman was everything to him. But in reality, she was only the echo of an ancient absence. His mother, an emotionally distant woman who taught him from childhood that love had to be earned, never freely given. So he wasn't seeking love. He was seeking redemption, the chance to finally be chosen. And you? Is your desire truly for that person, or for the possibility of feeling loved by what once ignored you? These dynamics are not obvious. They operate in the shadows. You may say you want someone light, but you're drawn to those who make you anxious. You may claim you want peace, but you only feel passion in war. Not because you're lying, but because your soul is unconsciously trying to rewrite its story. And that's where desire becomes a trap. Carl Jung reminds us that the unconscious has no sense of humor. It doesn't forget, it doesn't forgive, it doesn't simplify, it repeats. It repeats patterns, faces, sensations, until the pain becomes conscious or eternal. So no, what attracts you is not always love. Sometimes it's karma, and as Jung liked to say, karma is not punishment. It's repetition until you learn. Look, emotionally healthy people don't stir hurricanes within you. They don't keep you on constant alert. They don't play mind games. They don't ignite your anxiety. Do you know why? Because they don't activate your wound. And if your emotional compass is broken, you'll mistake that for boredom. You'll think something's missing, but what's missing isn't passion. It's the chaos you've learned to call love. That's where most of us get lost, because passion born from trauma is addictive. It creates a dance between expectation and rejection, between ecstasy and abandonment. And if your nervous system has been conditioned by pain, it will call that home. You might even say, I like intense relationships. But perhaps what you call intensity is just desperation, with a pleasant scent. So, I ask you, with tenderness but firmness, who do you love? And why? Don't give me a name. Give me a feeling. Is it calm or a storm? Is it embrace or a hunt? Do you feel seen or pursued? Carl Jung invites us to look not only at who we desire, but at what within us is desiring. Because if it's fear, emptiness, or the need to prove something to someone who's gone, then it's not love, it's a cry. And cries don't build homes, they only echo. Now, there's something you must understand. The most dangerous enemy isn't outside, it's in your mind. That impulse that makes you explode. That anxiety that paralyzes you. That emotional attachment that weakens you from within. All of it follows a pattern. And until you restructure the mental model that triggers it, everything will repeat, over and over. But there is a way to change that foundation. With cold logic, strategic awareness, and emotional retraining exercises. We've recorded a video showing how to apply this method practically. You can watch it now. Just scan the code on the screen or click the link in the description or the first pinned comment. There's something deeply troubling about loving, something that goes beyond the body, the gaze, the touch. Because sometimes, what you feel doesn't come from the person in front of you, but from an older, quieter, darker place, a place where your soul projected what it lost. Carl Jung believed that our psyche is inhabited by archetypal figures, deep structures that organize not only how we think, but also how we love. Among them, Two are particularly dangerous when it comes to desire: the anima and the animus. The anima represents, in men, the unconscious feminine aspect. The animus, in women, the masculine aspect that dwells in the shadows. But don't misunderstand, this has nothing to do with biological gender. It's about what has been repressed, denied, or never developed within you. Imagine this: a man raised from childhood to be rational, strong, invulnerable, sensitivity, affection, surrender. These were seen as weaknesses. Those qualities didn't disappear. They were pushed into the basement of the psyche, where, in the darkness, they transformed into a figure. An imaginary woman, emotionally charged, beautiful, and full of symbolism. That's the anima. And when that man meets someone who reflects her in the real world, he's lost. It's not her he loves. It's what she represents, the part of himself he could never live. And in that desire, he seeks not connection but wholeness. The same happens with women. Raised to be sweet, understanding, modest, their power, anger, and firmness were unwelcome. So the animus forms, an idealized masculine figure, confident, dominant. And when a man embodies that energy, she doesn't think, she surrenders. But here's the problem. What's projected isn't seen clearly. It's idealized, romanticized, turned into an idol, even when it should be a warning. Do you now understand why so many overwhelming passions have that taste of enchantment, of illusion? Because it's not about the other, it's about you, about a dormant part of your soul finally reflected as if in a shadowy mirror. And what happens when you fall in love with a mirror? You see yourself, or rather, you see what you could never be. But there's an even deeper figure in this psychological dance, the shadow. The shadow is everything you don't accept in yourself. Everything denied, rejected, condemned. Your secret fantasies, your suppressed anger, your envy, your fear, your misunderstood eroticism. Everything you locked in a cage to survive morality, culture, family. But the cage isn't secure. It only hides. And at some point, the shadow escapes, often as desire, as that inexplicable impulse, as that attraction to someone who contradicts everything you claim to want. That person carries, unknowingly, a fragment of your shadow, and that's why they attract you, why they consume you. Jung said we don't relate to people but to unconscious contents, and until you recognize your shadow, you'll be its slave. You'll love what destroys you, desire what imprisons you, call fate what is really just psychic programming. But there's something even more troubling. Imagine someone who, instead of living their shadow, learns to control it, manipulate it, use it. That person becomes dangerous, not out of malice, but out of awareness. They sense what attracts you, know how to activate your ghosts, and consciously or not, become the embodiment of your anima or animus to capture you. They become what you seek to feel whole, and then they possess you. That's the darkest point of Jung's theory of attraction. You don't fall in love with the one you love. You fall in love with the one who embodies your unconscious. And if that person chooses, they can dominate you completely without raising their voice. Think about it. How many times have you desired someone who made no sense, who caused you pain, yet still fascinated you? Who rejected you but made you return? Maybe it wasn't love, maybe it was your shadow guiding you. And if that's true, if the most hidden part of you chooses who you're attracted to, then desire isn't free, it's conditioned. But there is a way out. Jung invites us to individuation, the process of becoming whole, recognizing the anima and animus within you, facing the shadow without fear, integrating what was denied. When that happens, something shifts. You stop seeking in others what you lack. You stop falling in love with ghosts and start loving real people, flaws and all, but also with their presence. You understand that love isn't wholeness, it's overflow and desire, when born from integration, is no longer compulsion, it's choice. But to get there, you must descend to the parts of yourself you've avoided, converse with the ghosts whispering your darkest desires, and instead of repressing them, understand them. For only those who know their shadow can love with light. And perhaps the true pleasure lies not in being desired, but in finally recognizing yourself as whole, without needing to lose yourself in another. There's a particular silence that overtakes the body after the person you love rejects you again. A silence that isn't surprise but recognition, as if something in you knew from the start that this ending was already written. And yet, you stayed. How many times have you found yourself trapped in relationships that hurt but won't let go? How many times has your desire screamed for someone who only knew how to deny you? You call it love, passion, intensity. But Jung would have another name for it: emotional repetition. You're not loving the person. You're trying to win an ancient war with a new soldier. The conscious mind thinks it's choosing, but the soul is repeating, replaying scenes, changing the characters but keeping the same script. Jung said, until the unconscious becomes conscious, it will direct your life, and you'll call it fate. And that's exactly what happens in what he called a complex, an emotional core, often traumatic, that activates like a magnet, an internal code shouting, find someone to make me relive this, but with a different ending. But the ending rarely changes, because those still acting from their wound can only choose with the gaze of the child who suffered. Let me tell you a true story. An emotionally mature, spiritual, successful man, but his heart was a minefield. He only fell in love with cold women, women who ignored him, vanished for days, refused to love him as he needed. To the world, he seemed unlucky in love, but the truth was he was addicted, not to people, but to the feeling of rejection. Why? Because his mother, when he was a child, was exactly like that. Distant, unavailable, affectionate only when she chose, never when he needed it most. And the child he was never overcame that. So, as a man, his unconscious sought to repair the past, to win the love that was denied him. But he did so with women who repeated the same pattern. As if he were saying, this time, I'll make it work. But he didn't, because that love wasn't theirs to give. It belonged to a mother who was already gone, or who was never truly there. Do you understand what this means? That the love that destroys you might not be a mistake, but a misguided, unconscious, tragic attempt at healing. And it's not just men. How many women live falling in love with inaccessible men? Men who are exciting, intense, dominant, but cold. Men who flatter with the same intensity they ignore, who light the fire and then leave the room dark. These women say, I don't know why I always choose the wrong ones. The good ones bore me. I like difficult men. But behind that is a little girl who learned that love must be conquered, that she had to be good, sensual, smart, extraordinary to deserve attention. A girl who perhaps grew up with a father who only gave love when she excelled or who was simply never there. So now that woman doesn't seek affection. She seeks redemption, to prove she can be loved by someone who refuses her, someone who makes her feel like she did in childhood. Is that love? No. It's trauma disguised as romance. And do you know what makes it even crueler? The body joins in, chemistry responds, desire ignites, you feel butterflies, but they come from a stomach empty of affection. You think it's connection, but it's lack recognizing a pattern. When unhealed, trauma shapes your radar, and that radar will guide you straight to someone who can recreate your pain, with the unconscious hope that this time, it will be different. But it rarely is, because you're still trying to heal with the same poison that made you sick. Jung called this the compulsion to repeat, a force that blindly drives us to relive the same scripts, the same impossible loves, the same abusive dynamics, the same illusions, as if each new encounter were a desperate attempt to change the ending of a story already finished. And until you realize this, you'll keep mistaking pain for intensity, calling soulmate what is really just the reflection of an old ghost. But there is a way out, and it doesn't start outside. It doesn't start with changing partners. It starts by looking inward with courage, with rawness, with brutal honesty. You must ask yourself, does this desire come from my healing or my hunger? Do I want this person or what they represent? Am I loving, or am I trying to resolve something left open in my childhood? These questions aren't easy. They pull the ground from under you, but they also show you the door. Because true love, the kind that frees, builds, warms, doesn't come from lack. It comes from presence, from awareness. And when you love from awareness, desire is no longer a prison. It's a choice, an encounter. It's light, yet profound. You no longer need to repeat the past. You can honor it, listen to it, heal it, and then choose differently. Not because you're tired of pain, but because you finally understood that it was never love. It was just a cry begging for healing. And now, maybe you're ready to listen. Not all seduction is born of love. Sometimes it's born of fear. Sometimes it's a golden, shining, sensual armor, but still armor. Because when someone discovers they can control another through desire, tenderness gives way to strategy, and what we call romance becomes a theater, a game between broken mirrors. Carl Jung showed us that seduction isn't always spontaneous. It can be an unconscious choreography of defense, a way to control the other before they can hurt us. Imagine a woman who grew up without a reference for secure love. Perhaps her father was absent, unpredictable, or maybe the affection she received was always conditional. I only love you if you're perfect. That little girl learned that to be noticed, she had to shine, be desirable, irresistible, because being simply herself was never enough. Years later, that girl becomes a woman, and her sensuality becomes her sword. She learned that by becoming an object of desire, she controls the affection she once lacked. But what she wants isn't love. It's control, power, to no longer depend on anyone but make everyone depend on her. She doesn't want to be loved. She wants to be necessary, to make him kneel emotionally, so she'll never again be the rejected little girl. And him? He feels the enchantment, the magnetism, the desire that consumes him. But what he sees isn't her. It's the projection of his own lack, of the feminine he repressed, of the comfort he never had. She unknowingly embodies his anima, that symbolic figure he spent his life waiting for. But his anima is just that, a figure. And the real her has her wounds, her abysses, her pain. So their encounter becomes a spectacle. He desires her as if she were salvation. She manipulates him as if he were revenge. And what could have been love becomes war. Now let's reverse it. There are also men who learn that power comes from absence, that the more distant they are, the more desired they become. Men who confuse coldness with masculinity, who use silence as a weapon, who feed the other's insecurity with measured doses of attention, just enough to keep her dependent. These men don't want a woman. They want a reflection, a validation, someone to make them feel like gods because deep down, they're still little boys unseen by their fathers, men never validated in their essence, now needing to be idolized. So when they meet a woman lacking affection, who mistakes rejection for a challenge, they know exactly what to do. They give love at first, show up intense, hypnotic, but as soon as she surrenders, they vanish or grow cold. She goes mad, searches, demands, wonders. What did I do wrong? But the answer was never in her. It was in him, in the shadow he didn't face. This dance is cruel because in the end, no one loves anyone. They only love the feeling of power the other offers. One is hooked on domination, the other on hope. Love becomes performance, intimacy an illusion. Carl Jung would call this the trap of the unconscious, a game where each wears the other's disguise, not out of malice, but out of pain. And the more pain behind the seduction, the more intense it becomes. Because desire, when born from a wound, sounds louder than true love. And you, listening now, how many times have you found yourself in this dance? How many times have you desired someone who made you feel small? How many times have you mistaken coldness for depth? How many times did you think that the harder it was to win someone, the more special it would be? But let me tell you an uncomfortable truth. Love is not a price. It's presence. And any relationship that needs games to stay alight is already dying. Listen carefully. Some people don't know how to love. They know how to retain, seduce, dominate. But love, number. Because love requires vulnerability. And for those raised in hostile environments, vulnerability is dangerous. That's why many prefer to control rather than love. They'd rather keep you on the tightrope of desire than let you see who they really are. And if you too grew up without secure love, you'll mistake this game for passion. You'll think those emotional ups and downs are a sign of connection, but it's just adrenaline, addiction, romanticized trauma. So, observe closely who attracts you. Do they see you, or do they use you as a mirror? Do they love you, or do they love the power they have over you? And more importantly, are you loving, or are you just trying to win an emotional battle that didn't even start in this relationship? Don't blame yourself if you've been caught in this cycle. Almost everyone has. What matters now is what you do with this awareness. Seduction isn't the problem, but when it's used as a disguise for lack or a tool for revenge, it stops being a dance and becomes a prison. True intimacy begins when the game ends, when you no longer need to be desired to feel worthy, when you no longer need to manipulate to feel loved. And maybe, just maybe, the love you seek only appears when you stop performing, when the masks fall, when you look at someone without the intent to win but simply to be. Jung taught us that the meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances. If there's a reaction, both are transformed. But in the game of seduction, no one transforms. They only bind, and love dies silently, suffocated by ego. If you want to love truly, let go of control, let go of the need to seduce, and see what remains. If there's still a connection, then yes, perhaps love has finally arrived. True love begins where need ends, and conscious desire begins where the shadow is embraced. Have you ever wondered what changes when someone stops seeking a partner to complete them and finally starts finding themselves? When desire is no longer a cry from the void, but an invitation from presence. Most people never love consciously. They desire, need, beg, conform. But to love, truly love, requires something frightening: inner freedom. Carl Jung knew this, which is why he didn't romanticize passion. He deconstructed it. For Jung, true love is only possible after individuation. A long, often painful process where you stop projecting onto others what you lack and start becoming whole. That's when desire changes color, ceases to be a prison and becomes a choice, ceases to be lack and becomes celebration. But how do you get there? First, you must accept that parts of you still govern you without your awareness. The shadow, the trauma, the anima, the animus, the emotional complexes, all acting silently, choosing for you, desiring for you. You think you're loving someone? Maybe you're just seeking a lap to rest in. Maybe you're trying to rescue the mother who didn't hold you, the father who didn't see you, the adolescence that hurt you, the childhood that broke you. You think you're in control? But it's your story driving, and you're just a passenger. That's why so many relationships feel like repeated movies with new actors. Because you change the person, but not the pattern, not the script, not the wound. And as long as that remains unseen, desire will remain compulsion. You'll call it chemistry, but it's just emotional programming. You'll call it fate, but it's just your trauma calling your name. But here, at this point in the journey, something opens. Awareness arrives, and when it does, everything changes. You start seeing beyond the charm, beyond the shiver, beyond the magnetic presence. You look at the other and ask, does this person calm me or fuel my anxiety? Do I want them or what they represent? Does this desire come from my fullness or my lack? These questions aren't romantic. They're surgical. And that's exactly why they save. Because desire born from awareness isn't an uncontrolled fire. It's a steady warmth. It doesn't burn, it warms. It doesn't imprison, it supports. True love doesn't sweep the ground from under you. It teaches you to walk barefoot. It shows you that you no longer need to chase those who don't see you. You just need to see yourself. That's liberation, and it doesn't happen overnight. It comes when you stop romanticizing your pains, when you realize that devastating passion was just the echo of an open wound. That inexplicable relationship was actually perfectly explainable. You just need to look at your story. Jung said the goal of life isn't happiness, but the realization of the self. And the self isn't realized by being half. It's realized by integrating. That means stopping the mutilation to fit the other's desire. It means accepting your shadows and instead of projecting them, embracing them. It means stopping the search for soulmates and starting to be your own whole soul. Want to know if you're ready to love truly? Then observe how you handle solitude. Because those who can't be with themselves will use others as anesthesia, and all anesthesia wears off. But addiction lingers. Loving consciously is being whole, desiring yes, but without needing. It's giving yourself yes, but without disappearing. And for many, that seems boring. What about passion, the butterflies, the madness? Let me tell you something that might sound strange. Peace is exciting too, but you need to retrain your body. Because if you've spent your life at war, calm feels like death. But it's not. It's life. A new life. The right person might not give you butterflies, but they'll let you breathe, sleep in peace, laugh without fear. They'll look at you, and you'll recognize yourself. Not as a half waiting to be filled, but as someone who finally suffices. That's the desire that chooses. That's the desire that doesn't imprison. And the most beautiful thing is that this desire is silent. It doesn't scream, demand, or beg. It simply is. Because when you find yourself, the other stops being a crutch and becomes a companion. And that's when love can finally bloom. Music. In the end, perhaps the love we seek so desperately was never in the other. It was in the gaze we haven't yet learned to cast upon ourselves. Because what you call "I like him" or "I desire her" is sometimes just the echo of an inherited, lived, ignored, but never truly understood void. Sexual attraction, that force that moves us, blinds us, consumes us, isn't simple. It's the stage where our shadows dance. It's the whisper of an unresolved childhood. It's often the trauma saying, "Let's try again," but this time with a different body. Carl Jung didn't want you to flee love. He wanted you to see it without veils, without projections, without anesthesia. He wanted you to recognize that what binds you to the other is the part of you still chained to your story. That's why the true encounter doesn't happen when two halves complete each other, but when two wholes recognize each other. Desire becomes sacred only when it stops being an escape and becomes a choice. When you look at someone and, instead of thinking, "Save me," you say, "I choose you, but I also have myself." So, the next time your heart races, your body trembles, your mind starts to fantasize, stop, breathe, and ask yourself, is this love or just my wound feeling hope? Because healing doesn't happen when you find the right love. Healing happens when you stop choosing love with the wrong part of yourself. I remember years ago falling madly in love with someone who ignored me. She was fascinating, mysterious, unavailable, and of course I was hooked. I spent months trying to win that love, sending long messages, waiting for replies that came days late, wondering what I could do to make her choose me. It took me a long time to understand that what bound me to her wasn't love. It was familiarity. She made me feel the way I did in childhood. Insecure, invisible, hungry for approval. And when I understood that, it was like waking from a dream, or rather, a nightmare disguised as romance. This video was born from that awakening, from the desire to talk to you like an old friend at 2 in the morning, between a sip of cold coffee and a silence heavy with truths. Because I know many of us are tired of repeating the same cycles, of loving the same face with different names, of calling fate what is really just an unresolved emotional pattern. If you've made it this far, it's because, like me, you carry that desire to understand, to free yourself, to love with eyes wide open. And for that, thank you. Truly, for listening, for feeling, for being here. If you want to know how others achieve that unshakable mental stability, click now on the link in the description or the first pinned comment. The content is available for a limited time. If this video made you rethink your story, if it stirred something in you, even if it hurt, especially if it hurt, then give it a like, comment on what hit you the hardest, and share it with someone else lost in this same kind of love. By the way, tell me, what's the pattern you've repeated most in your love life? And what have you learned from it? And before you go, don't forget to subscribe. If you can handle videos that talk about shadow, projection, and desire, with the subtlety of a slap in the middle of the night, this channel was made for you. In the videos appearing on the screen, we go even deeper, but I warn you, some might leave you with existential insomnia or the urge to change your entire life. Click on one if you have the courage. See you there, and until the next dive.